included in this measure, Mr. President, because it is not being amended by this measure.
Yes.
So it stays.
So there's existing law? Maybe no?
Di ba sa existing law? Nandyan, no? Yeah, Mr. President, in the existing laws, 6975, only 6975, and 8551, it mentioned about dispositions. But here, in our proposed amendment, Mr. President, binanggit natin dito, the chief of the PNP shall have a command group composed of the offices of the deputy chief of the PNP for administration, the deputy chief of the PNP for operations, and the chief of the directorial staff. So, binanggit lang natin dito, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, look at page 14 of your bill, Mr. President. It's line 18. The second in command. Yan, the third, tapos 920, the third in command. Tapos na. It ends at the third in command, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
There's no fourth in command, yes. Why is this, why is it important, Mr. President, to know na may second in command and third in command when the PNP chief is appointed by the President?
Well, for purposes of succession, Mr. President, in case the chief PNP is not available, he's going to, the number 2 man will take over. And if the number 2 man,
As OIC.
as OIC, if the number 2 man is incapable, then
Yeah.
so on and so forth, Mr. President.
Thank you, pero kunyari magka-vacancy sa second in command. Does the third in command succeed sa second in command? I don't think so.
It follows, Mr. President. This is governed by the Pulcom resolutions that very strict yung career path of the command group. Talagang
So,
nagsusunod-sunod yan sila. Hindi
Kaya-
pwede mag-overtake.
Kahit happy na yung ating officials as the deputy chief for operations, he will be forced to be deputy chief for administration, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, by all means. Yun po ang kwan, yun po ang movement dapat.
This is not in law, but in Napolcom.
Na Pulcom resolution, Mr. President.
Okay, akala ko, Mr. President, kaya tayo nagko-command group, para mayroong cabinet, ilagay ko lang sa quotation marks, may cabinet si PNP chief, Mr. President,
Ang cabinet
parang
niya-
consultative, meron siyang collective or consultative leadership, Mr. President.
Yeah, ganon din ang intention dyan, Mr. President. But the cabinet really of the chief PNP is the directorial staff. Yan yung cabinet niya, directorial staff.
And the directorial staff does not include the command group.
Yes, Mr. President. Iba
It
yung
does
command group. Hindi.
Sayang yung wisdom nung kino-consider natin na top 3, the next top 3 officials of the PNP.
Well, Mr. President, hindi masayang. Hindi masayang yun because there are times wherein the decision-making of the chief PNP is confined to the command group discussion. Sila lang ang mag-decide. We call that committee of 3 or committee of 4. Committee of 4. Sila lang nag-uusap, Mr. President, kung anong maging decision nila. Meron yung decision-making process wherein yung buong kabinete or buong directorial staff ang kinukonsider ng chief PNP. So hindi po masayang, Mr. President.
How large is the directorial staff, Mr. President?
This is composed of ilang directorates? 11 directorates, Mr. President,
Yes, correct.
with the rank of 2-star. 11.
Kasi, Mr. President, kanina, during the interpellation of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, parang he was mentioning the tenure in office of the chiefs, and then parang worried tayo because, if it's too short, then the programs of the chief may not be implemented. Pero ang point ko is, why are we so personalized in the approach, Mr. President? Sana merong mga institutional programs na hindi dependent sa personality ng Chief PNP. That's why I was hoping na merong ang cabinet system or collegial planning, and our sponsor says yun yung directorial staff na 11 directorates, Mr. President. So sana may mga some short-term, medium-term to long-term plans ang PNP, not the PNP chief, but the PNP as an institution, Mr. President, so that we should not be worried too much about the length of the tenure of the PNP chief. Kasi mayroon at least short-term or medium-term, long-term vision ang organization na, Mr. President. And binuo yun ng collegial body, hindi ng isang tao, so that we are not so personalized or dependent on one person, Mr. President, who we call the Chief PNP.
Correct, Mr. President. In fact, through the CPSM? CPSM,
Yes, sir.
Through the Center for Police Strategy Management, Mr. President, plans and programs of PNP are being created, and they are being covered by Napolcom resolutions, Mr. President. But then again, pagpasok ng bagong chief PNP, meron siyang sariling bright ideas din na gusto niyang ipasok. That is why yung kanyang personal na bright ideas sometimes takes precedence over the program, the program trust of the PNP, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. This bill is about the reorganization of the PNP. At ito po mga napapansin kong mga terminologies natin or levels of the offices. No? We have a directorial staff with 11 directorates. We have the area police commands na merong limang police commands. And then we have special police offices, Mr. President, na under our bill, 9 po ito. And then I think meron pa tayong ibang may mga units pa po tayo. We have an administrative support units and then we have operational support units. Can the sponsor educate this representation on how all of these offices and units are related to each other, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, first, we start with the directorial staff, Mr. President. Ang role po nila, Mr. President, ay depending on their assigned task, no? Yung directorial staff or Directorate for Personnel and Records Management is in charge of personnel and records management. Directorate for Intelligence is in charge for collating all the intelligence activities of the whole of the PNP. Directorate for Operations, siya po yung nag-synchronize sa lahat ng police operations na ginagawa buong Pilipinas. Directorate for Logistics, siya po ang in charge sa lahat ng mga logistical requirements ng buong PNP. So on and so forth, Mr. President. So, nangyari, itong staff na ito, all their efforts are recommendatory in nature doon sa Chief PNP. Lahat ng kanilang mga plano na ginagawa are being recommended to the Chief PNP for approval. So yung papel ng directorial staff. Ito namang papel ng mga national support units. Una, yung NOSOS, National Operational Support Units like the CIDG, Special Action Force, Highway Patrol Group. Ito yung mga operating units on the ground, Mr. President, na nagko-concentrate lang to one particular specific field, Mr. President. How do you call it? One particular function of criminal investigation, doon yun sa CIDG. Function of intelligence, doon yan sa intelligence group. So, yun po, Mr. President. And yun ito namang isa, yung NASO, National Administrative Support Units, sila po yung mga units na may kanya-kanya rin silang function. Like for example, yung like for example, the Finance Service, Mr. President. Sila po ang in charge sa pasweldo ng ating mga kapulisan. Like the Legal Service, Mr. President. Sila po yung in charge sa legal.
Yes, Mr. President.
So, yun po, Mr. President, may kanya-kanya po sa
Yes.
functions na ginagampanan, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, ang kunyari, operational support unit na intelligence group, they do the actual intelligence work. Si Director for Intelligence, he does not do the intelligence work.
No, Mr. President.
So, is the intelligence group under the Directorate for Intelligence?
Functional supervision, Mr. President. Functional supervision. Because the source of intelligence of the whole of the PNP is not only the intelligence group, the regional offices, provincial offices, and other units. So itong Directorate for Intelligence, siya po yung nag-synchronize, nag-supervise as far as intelligence matters ng PNP. Siya po yung mayroong functional supervision over all units na involved in gathering intelligence and producing intelligence, Mr. President.
So there is parang a redundancy, Mr. President? There's a redundancy?
Actually, there's no redundancy, Mr. President, because Directorate for Intelligence is, kuwan lang siya. Siya yung policy making, at the same time, siya yung central repository of all intelligence data records of the PNP. Yung intelligence group naman, sila yung nasa ground, Mr. President, na talagang in charge of counterintelligence,
Sige.
ano po yung ha? Tactical intelligence, strategic intelligence, monitoring of terrorists. Mr. President, ito yung trabaho ng IJ. Sila yung nasa ground talaga.
po.
Yung intelligence operatives, sila.
Sige po, our sponsor is really the best person to defend this bill, Mr. President, kasi talagang former chief of the PNP. Alam niya po itong organization. So, for example, sir, the Operational Support Unit na Intelligence Group, the head here is under who, Mr. President?
Directly under the chief of the Philippine National Police, Mr. President, Chief PNP.
Not even the deputy chief for operations? Hindi siya doon? Because it is an operational support unit.
Yes, but functional supervision only, Mr. President. Pero decision-making wise, direkta siya sa Chief PNP. Pero supervision, sinusupervise siya ng number 3 man, yung Deputy Chief of PNP for Operations. And yung kanyang mga output ay pinapasa niya doon sa Directorate for Intelligence, Central Repository of All Intelligence Data, yung DI, Directorate for Intelligence.
Samantalang yung mga regional and provincial intelligence po natin, kanino sila directly under?
Directly under the commander on the ground. Provincial intelligence is under the provincial director.
Provincial director.
Regional intelligence under the regional director.
And then all the way, they go up to
The Chief PNP.
From the regional diretso na kay Chief PNP.
Chief PNP.
Hindi po apektado yung ng area police command.
Ginawa kasi natin ang area police command, Mr. President, is yung kuwan lang sila, yung sa terrorism, internal security operations, disaster relief management. So yun ang kanilang function, Mr. President. So if this intelligence pertains to internal security operations, then dadaan pa rin ito sa kanila, Mr. President.
Okay, so yung mga detalye po na ganito which are not found in the bill, no? So where shall we find all of these things? Kunyari, I am just a new recruit of the police. I want to understand the entire police organization. Itong mga, where do I report? Where my report ends up with who? All the way up where? Where shall I find this, Mr. President? Because it cannot be found in our bill.
Well, Mr. President, all of these are covered with NAPOLCOM resolutions. Ito ay ginagawa ng PNP based on NAPOLCOM resolutions, Mr. President. Sa NAPOLCOM memorandum circulars, Mr. President.
Sige po. All the details are there, Mr. President. Ito pong Peace Process and Development Center. What is it, Mr. President? Is it a special police office?
It's it is under the special police offices, Mr. President. Sila po yung office primarily responsible in monitoring of the development and implementation of peace agreements and pertinent laws, Mr. President. So,
Yes, Mr. President, there are 9 special police offices. Sa organizational chart po ng PNP, saan po sila mailalagay? Are they under a directorate or under a deputy chief? Where are they, Mr. President?
they are directly under the office of the Chief PNP, Mr. President. Direkta po sila.
Sige, itong siyam po, direkta.
Yung siyam. Yes, Mr. President.
The Internal Affairs Service, Mr. President. Sino po ang karangko niya among all of these different offices and levels that we are discussing, Mr. President?
He's one of the special officers, Mr. President, the IAS. He reports directly to the Chief of the Philippine National Police.
So thank you for that answer, Mr. President. So we will consider the Internal Affairs Service as one of the
Special,
special police officers. So kung gaano kahalaga itong siyam na nabanggit sa bill natin, ganun din dapat kahalaga, kung hindi sana mas mahalaga pa si IAS, Mr. President.
Yeah, actually, Mr. President, the IAS is not even directly reporting to any of the directorates, to any of the command group, but only to the Chief PNP directly.
But it same with the 9 special police
Yes,
officers, right?
yes, by virtue of their function, Mr. President, that they serve as the advisor or consultant of the Chief PNP as far as human rights is concerned. It's the SRAW as far as the yung nabanggit ko kayo na, Mr. President,
Yes.
yung
So ito pong
passes.
ito pong ating panukalang batas, kasi bagong a new section 25-C is being inserted. Although 9 lang yung special police officers dito, it doesn't mean na 9 lang talaga yan, kasi meron palang mga existing in some other laws na hindi na natin binanggit ulit, right? So 9 plus the internal affairs.
No, actually, Mr. President, ito na talaga. Binanggit natin dito yung existing ngayon.
Yes, pero sa internal affairs, hindi yata natin binanggit sa bill natin. Wala pong internal affairs sa bill natin. No mention of the internal affairs. Which,
Yes, as of now, it's existing as...
yes, kaya nga.
yeah.
Kasi kung wala naman tayong balak baguhin any of the rule, concept, feature of the Internal Affairs Service, hinayaan na natin sa existing law.
Yes, Mr. President.
And we are not indirectly repealing or anything, no? That particular bill, Mr. President. Pero what is it nga? Kasi na-identify na nga natin sa PNP structure, you have special police offices, you have directorates, you have APCs, you have support units. Si Internal Affairs Service, ano po siya? Saan siya most likely nagbibilong na grupo?
It belongs to the special police officers, Mr. President. That is directly under the chief of the PNP. Walang iba pwede makialam sa kanya. Chief PNP lang.
So, ang special police offices, ang ating bill ay naglilista ng siyam.
Siyam.
Okay. Tapos meron pang existing na hindi natin
Yes.
Internal Affairs.
Yes, Mr.
So,
President.
10. Meron pa bang iba na existing
Wala na.
Wala na. So,
Wala.
10 po yan.
10, Mr.
10
President.
special police officers, at least ang ating masasabi.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that, Mr. President. Ngayon, nandito na po ako sa page 13 po ng ating bill. Ito po lang mga opisina na mga binanggit po natin. Yung directorate po, Mr. President, ano pong ranko ng head nun, Mr. President?
2-star general, Mr. President.
So,
Police Major General.
Major General. Yung ating mga area police command.
3-star general, Mr. President. Police Lieutenant General.
Yung ating po mga special police officers.
1-star general, Mr. President, except for PNPA. That is a 2-star general.
Yung ating po mga administrative support and then operational support units.
Generally, Mr. President, 1-star general, except for SAP, certain units like SAP, CIDG, CSG, 2-star general.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Pero ito po mga sinasabi, nabanggit natin ng mga parts na structure ng PNP ay ang iba rito po ay aminado tayo ay hindi created ng batas, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, I agree.
Marami-rami ang hindi created ng batas, Mr. President. Through a NAPOLCOM resolution.
Ito pong if you have the chart, Mr. President, lahat po ng kulay blue, yan po yung created by virtue of the POLCOM resolution and not by law, not by legislation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, yung printer ko black and white, wala pang kulay blue, pero you have a spare copy. 15, Mr. President. I think this is the rule, Mr. President. Provided that no office headed by a police brigadier general or higher shall be created unless provided by law. Mr. President.
Correct, Mr. President.
So that is the rule, Mr. President. So how come we have created many units or offices headed by a police brigadier general or higher, Mr. President, and there is no law?
Well, Mr. President, as I've said in my explanation yesterday, during the last interpellation, is that when they created this these units, they stated that the commander is only police senior superintendent or full colonel. During the creation, full colonel, so that there's no violation of law.
Meron pang converter.
But siguro meron silang coordination na Polcom, DILG and PNP, coordination with DBM na ilagay nyo sa one of the provisions of the GAA itong particular provision to, Section 92 of 2023 GAA, no? 2023 GAA, Mr. President.
Which you read yesterday.
Yes, yesterday.
The other day, Mr.
Yeah.
President. Yes.
Which,
yesterday.
That you even require me to recite the legal
Yes,
doctrine.
yes, Mr. President, the
Yeah.
qualified political agency doctrine. Pero yes, Mr. President, now, this is now in our bill. Kaya naka-bold face pa nga ito. Ibig sabihin nun, this is an amendment. This you will, the sponsor will now clearly make this as a statement of law with mandatory effect, Mr. President. Kasi stated in the negative pa eh. Oh, kasi no office shall be created. So pagkaganyan po, mandatory nature na yan. So Mr. President, so if this becomes law, are we not now going to disable the NAPOLCOM, Mr. President, which has been doing this for the longest time?
Well, said practice, Mr. President, you and me agree that they are violations of law. So, with this, wala na.
Yes, klaro na.
Hindi nila gagawin yan.
Klaro na, yes,
Hindi nila gagawin. Kasi binigyan na sila ng itong batas na ito.
I'm just giving an advance warning of the interpretation of this provision. Kasi ganun po yun. Talagang mandatory po ito. Yes.
It should be noted, Mr. President, that this proposal is coming from the PNP and the NAPOLCOM. So alam nila ito na they're bound to follow this law. Wala na silang ilboro.
Is there no existing law na meron na pong sentence na ganito? Wala ba yun sa mga 8551, 6975?
Section 35. Section 35 of RA 6975, Mr. President.
Oh, so nahanap na pala itong sentence na ito sa existing law, Mr. President. So,
Totoo yan, Mr. President. But Section 35 is limited to support units only. The national operational support units and the national administrative support units. But itong sa law natin na pinopropose, Mr. President, is lahat na covered.
okay, yes, Mr. President. Pero yung idea, no, it was limited to a support unit. But has there been a support unit headed by a chief superintendent or higher, which was not created by law? Chief superintendent, meaning to say police brigadier general or higher. There is. Yes, there has been a police support unit created without a law.
Yeah,
Yes.
as I've said, yung
Yes.
lahat ng color blue, Mr. President, they are all
Sige.
Huh?
So,
except one pala, Mr. President, anti-cybercrime group is created by law under the Anti-Cybercrime Act. So, ito lang pala, created by law. Itong isa, anti-cybercrime group. Meron palang batas ito.
among those in blue in the chart given to me by the sponsor, i-minus natin si cybercrime group.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that. So at least na klaro, that's why we need this law.
Yes, Mr. President.
The law will catch up with the katulad ng sinabi ko, what has been happening on the ground, Mr. President, in the PNP.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. President, this is the same section, with the Given the Chief of the PNP the power to appoint the Provincial Director and the Chief of Police in cities and municipalities with proper endorsement by the Chairman of the Commission. And then I think there's a commitment that we will abandon this idea, Mr. President.
Correct, Mr. President.
But when we use the phrase here, with proper endorsement by the Chairman of the Commission, what commission are we referring to and who is the Chairman?
National Police Commission, Mr. President, being chaired by the Secretary of Interior and Local Government.
So when our bill talks about a commission or mentions the word commission, it refers to the NAPOLCOM.
Correct, Mr. President.
Because I have a problem with that, Mr. President. Can we jump, Mr. President, bago ko malimutan yung point na yun? Can I bring the attention of the sponsor to page 18, Mr. President?
18.
Yes,
Mr. President.
lines 8 to 9. Meron po tayong deletion of the words civil service. Ang naiwan, because of that deletion, okay, this talks about the appointment of the PNP officers and members. Okay. Police Colonel to Police Lieutenant General appointed by the President upon recommendation of the Chief of the PNP with proper endorsement by the Chairman of the Commission. Okay, yan po yung effect ng ating amendment. Pero ang original law based on our bill with proper endorsement by the Chairman of the Civil Service Commission. We are deleting two words, the word civil service, which I believe changes now the meaning of the remaining word commission. It will now refer to
NAPOLCOM.
correct. So
Yes.
are we consciously doing that, Mr. President?
With purpose, Mr. President.
Yeah. So why are we now taking away the power to authority to endorse by the Chairman of the CSC, Mr. President? Ang laking difference po nun, ha? It comes from a power of a constitutional commission. Ililipat ngayon natin by making it just chairman of the commission. NAPOLCOM na pong ibig sabihin nun, Mr. President. Why are we doing this, Mr. President?
Well, subject to confirmation by Commission of Appointments, Mr. President.
Tanggal na po yun.
Tinanggal natin. Because, yun nga ang reklamo ng PNP, Mr. President. There are two commissions that is supervising the PNP. We have the National Police Commission and the Civil Service Commission. So, masyado na pong pagdating sa promotion, pagdating sa ang daming dadaanan ng papel ng PNP, Mr. President. Napakahirap po. Para bang pinahirapan natin ang gusto ang buhay ng PNP. Dalawang komisyon ang nag-supervise sa kanya. So, redundancy na ito, Mr. President.
Mr. President, yung isang commission dito actually sa paragraph C yan of Section 31 of RA 6975 as amended. The other commission, there is Commission on Appointments nga, but wala yan kasi that is, whether we like it or not, unconstitutional yan eh.
Yes.
So, by styling amendment, we are deleting, actually, tagalin na natin yung phrase na yon na wala namang effect. So, naiwan na lang sana, this is a policy question actually now. Pag-promote ni Police Colonel, pag-appoint sa Police Colonel to Police Lieutenant General, appointed by the President, pag nare-recommend ng CPNP, pero may endorsement pa dapat. Okay, policy ngayon, we are changing the rule. Kung hindi natin gagalawin ito, the endorsement should come from the Chairman of the Civil Service Commission. Isa lang. Walang problema. Isang commission lang. Pero sa bill po natin, gusto natin gawin Chairman of the Commission. Therefore, making it Chairman of the NAPOLCOM, Secretary of the DLG yun. So, isang tao lang din. Yun. So, hindi ko nakita paano yung kahirapan doon sa unang senaryo na sa chairman ng CSC kukunin yung endorsement. So, anong kahirapan doon? Tapos, dahil sa mahirap yun, pinalitan ngayon natin na chairman na ng NAPOLCOM ang kukunan ng endorsements. It's the same thing. We need one endorsement from one chairman, Mr. President.
Well, just to simplify things, Mr. President, gusto natin NAPOLCOM lang talaga mag-control ng PNP. At least nakatutok. Wala iba tinutukan ng NAPOLCOM, kundi PNP lang. Kasi kung sa civil service, lahat ng government agencies, civil government agencies, ay yun ang tinututukan ng civil service. Then, yung nga, abutin na siyam-siyam yung mga papel dyan at yan ang reklamo ng mga karamihan ng pulis na hindi na acted upan na yung mga papel na abutan sila ng retirement age nila. Hindi na napopromote.
Sa hearing po ng committee, did we get the position of the civil service?
Sige, Mr. President.
Sa hearing po ng ating committee, did we get the position of the civil service on this actual amendment, Mr. President? Hindi lang po ito kasi mere deletion ng words. It changes actually the requirement, Mr. President.
Uh,
Wala po. Okay.
Yes, civil service was invited, Mr. President, but they did not raise any objection.
Sige.
And according to the Constitution, the Polcom lang talaga ang mag-supervise ng PNP.
Constitution?
Yeah. Okay na. Ano?
Constitution. Sa Constitution natin ko. Meron yata.
Section, Article 6, Section 6, Mr. President, of the Constitution, the Philippine Constitution. Article 16, Section 6.
Sa dulo.
Hanapin nga yan.
Specific function. They develop ang network of policies or promotion. Hindi. Vice President others. Specific mandate.
It says here, Mr. President, Section 6, powers and functions of the Commission, meaning the National Police Commission. Letter A, exercise administrative control and operational supervision over the PNP, which shall mean the power to, number 1, develop policies and promulgate a policy manual prescribing rules and regulation for efficient organization, administration, and operation, so on and so forth, Mr. President.
So is our position, Mr. President, that we're making that amendment because if we will allow the chairman of the Civil Service Commission to give the endorsement, it would be unconstitutional?
Hindi naman, Mr. President. Hindi naman.
We will not use the Constitution as the reason. So,
Just to reinforce our claim, Mr. President, we use the Constitution.
Sige, at least, Mr. President, I made it of record na may change of policy tayo rito. So, Mr. President, kitapusin lang po natin itong kasi kahit ito na lang pong itong section, hanggang section 6 po tayo. May bago rin po tayong policy rito. We're giving a fixed term to the Chief PNP of 2 years. Tama po?
Yes, Mr.
bago.
President.
Before mahaba din. Ang sabi doon is not, ang term niya is not to exceed 4 years actually, di ba? That was the choice.
Yes, Mr. President, 4 years.
Not to exceed 4 years. Ang sabi lang ngayon natin, it's a fixed term of 2 years. With the same concept ito, so within the 2 years, lampasan mo man yung compulsory retirement age, tuloy ka pa rin kasi it's supposed to be a fixed term. Tama
Yes,
po?
Mr. President.
Ito po sa page 14, yung proviso po natin sa beginning ng line 2, provided further that the present chief of the PNP shall not benefit from the fixed term provided therein and shall be compulsorily retired upon reaching the retirement age.
bakit po kailangan natin ito isulat pa?
We are proposing to delete this line, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Nung nabasa ko nga ito, sabi ko bakit. Yes.
Salamat at napansin mo rin, Mr.
Opo,
President.
and actually, the present chief has been extended, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
yeah, Mr. President. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, Mr. President. Okay, so that we will stop at section 5, Mr. President. So if we can resume tomorrow, we start at section 6 and mapapabilis na po tayo kasi there some pages naman sa bill po natin is mga 3 to 4 pages entire deletions eh.
Yes, Mr. President.
The author deleted some sections and then replaced them with the support units ata.
Yes,
Those were
Mr.
the support units, Mr. President. So we will just need a little more time, Mr. President, and we will be able to finish this, Mr. President. So because of we all have an engagement this tonight, Mr. President. So
And
with
my-
the permission of the sponsor, if we can suspend the interpellation.
Yes, Mr. President. My wife is already very angry right now. She's already there in the venue. So we have to go now. Including your wife, Mr. President. We have to go.
New section 30-A.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. President, currently, the status of the PNP cadets they're just mere job orders, Mr. President. Job orders. Unlike the cadets of the Philippine Military Academy, they are appointed as regular members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. But our police cadets from the Philippine National Police Academy, they are just mere job orders. And pag may mangyari during their training, Mr. President, kawawa yung mga parents. Halimbawa, may namatay during the training, wala talagang matanggap because job orders lang sila. Ngayon, in our bill, gagawin natin silang meron silang appointment, but albeit only temporary, subject to renewal every year. Kapag nakapasa sila for the current year, next year, i-renew na naman sila. Kasi kung gawin natin permanent, ang problema dyan is baka, yun nga, hindi sila makapasa sa kanilang mga academic and other scholastic requirements, then hindi marirenew yung kanilang appointment. But at least they are appointed to the government, Mr. President.
Do they hold the rank, Mr. President?
The rank is only police cadet, Mr. President.
Police cadet is a rank, not a position.
It's a position. It's a position. But they have their corresponding ranks within the cadet corps, but this is not part of the regular structure of the Philippine National Police. So whether you are a third-class cadet, a fourth-class cadet, third-class cadet, second-class cadet, or first-class cadet, still your status is your status is a police cadet, and you don't have rank commensurate to that of the regular ranks of the Philippine National Police.
Meron kasi tayong last sentence, Mr. President. Police cadets shall be entitled to all salaries, benefits, and other emoluments given to a police executive master sergeant. So,
Yes,
did we mention the rank just for the salaries, but they are not given that rank?
You're correct, Mr. President. Just to give emphasis na yung kanilang sweldo, their emoluments are equivalent to that of the police executive master sergeant, but they are not holding such rank, Mr. President. Just like the PMA cadets, their salaries are is pegged between a master sergeant and a second lieutenant. So yan ang status ng PMA cadets. So kinopyan na lang rin natin ito, Mr. President, from the...
So sa PMA, Mr. President, wala ring rank ang ating mga PMA cadets?
Walang rank as far as the AFP rank
Yes.
structure is concerned. Wala po, Mr. President. Kundi cadet lang ang nakalagay doon.
Kasi sa ranking natin sa police, the lowest rank would be a patrolman/patrolwoman, Mr. President.
Correct, Mr.
And
President.
then our cadets will get the salaries and benefits of a police executive master sergeant, which is just below a police lieutenant, Mr. President. Mataas.
Yes, correct.
And
That's
yet,
correct.
rank-wise, the cadet is lower than the patrolman/patrolwoman.
Not really, Mr. President. They just don't have that rank in the regular structure of the Philippine National Police. But yun nga, salary-wise, doon sila papasok sa in between police lieutenant and police executive master sergeant. So,
In between or exactly a police executive master sergeant?
exactly the same. The same with the police executive master sergeant given to a police executive master sergeant. So,
So, ano po to? This will be sufficient basis for the DBM to release amounts for the salaries and benefits and other emoluments to cadets who do not have the rank of police executive master sergeant. Okay po yan? Okay na po ito? Na-test na po ba ito in its implementation, Mr. President?
yes, it is existing right now, Mr. President. Pinapractice na yan ng DBM, yung pagbibigay ng salary nila na equivalent to police executive master sergeant. So no salary adjustments, just plain institutionalizing this system, Mr. President, through legislation.
In the earlier interpellation, I think the sponsor mentioned that we have at least around 1,000 PNP cadets.
Correct, Mr. President.
PNPA cadets.
1,150.
1,100.
As of the moment, Mr. President, but it varies year to year, depending on the enrollees, number of enrollees.
So ito pong ating new section 30-A, what would be the budgetary implication of this section, Mr. President?
There is none, Mr. President, because so far, as we speak, the same salary is being, the same emoluments being given to the cadets.
So ginagawa na.
Ginagawa na po,
So,
Mr.
but,
President.
do we know what is our budget for the PNPA cadets? For salaries, benefits, and other emoluments. Not for the running of the academy, Mr. President.
Sa buong cadets corps, saan? Mr. President, the total budget for the salaries of the PNPA cadets, Mr. President, is 810,871,000 pesos, Mr. President. 810 million for the year 2024.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pero our sponsor mentioned earlier that sa ngayon job order sila. So, and yet we budget-wise we are spending the same or we will be spending the same even if we pass Section 30-A. So ano po actual na earnings-wise, no effect on our cadets. So it is just the status of their employment, Mr. President.
Correct, Mr. President.
Ano sa practical terms, anong effect sa buhay ng kadete po nun?
Well, for benefits purposes, Mr. President, they will be entitled to such benefits as that of the regular members of the Philippine National Police.
So sa ngayon, hindi.
Sa ngayon, hindi. Ngayon, hindi, Mr.
So there will be a budget implication, Mr. President. Kasi kung sa ngayon, let us assume sa ngayon, job order sila, 810 million na, wala pa palang benefits yun. Kung maging with the rank of Police Executive Master Sergeant, that is the base, the rank to be used as base, Mr. President, there should be a budget implication, Mr. President.
Only for the death and disability, Mr. President. Yun lang po ang magiging additional budgetary requirements kung meron mang mamatay na kadete, Mr. President, during the training. The death and disability.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sa history po ng PNPA, kumusta naman po ang ating mga deaths and then cases of siguro mga permanent disability po itong pinag-uusapan natin, Mr. President?
So far, historically, Mr. President, the latest casualty that resulted to death during training of the PME cadet was, we have only one death incident
Swimming.
in the year 2020.
Sa swimming
20,
practice.
20 and 21. Tag-isa-isa, Mr. President. Sa 2020, isa. 2021, isa.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. President. Wala namang death due to hazing, Mr. President.
So far, wala, Mr. President.
But still they're hazing, Mr. President.
The PNP administration is very strict about hazing, Mr. President. Binabantayan na po nila.
Thank you. Di ba yung sa ating sa propose natin na reform of the MUP system, ang ating developing consensus dito ay new entrants lamang yung maapektuhan. Okay. Pag i-apply natin sa PNP po yun, who is the new entrant, Mr. President? The first year PNPA cadet, student, or the graduate of the PNPA? Who is the new entrant, Mr. President?
It's the graduate, Mr. President. The graduate is the new entrant.
Siguro i-review natin yung Mr. President kasi tinatrato na natin yung mga kadete na with salaries, benefits, and other emoluments of Police Executive Master Sergeant. And I believe that the 4 years nila sa PNPA Academy would be counted towards their service, years of service, Mr. President.
Yes, we can review that, Mr.
Yes, Mr.
President.
President.
I think we can review that. But of course, binibigyan lang natin ng kunting paluwag itong kadete because nga yung kanilang status is temporary, not permanent
yes.
status. So once they swear in after graduation, once they take their oath of office as police lieutenants, that is already the regular appointment, Mr. President. So diyan na mag-start yung kanilang
Thank you. That's yun na.
Direction. Oh, thank you.
Yun na yung new entrant.
new entrant. Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. So, okay, thank you. I've been clarified, Mr. President. Mr. President, may good news kasi tayo. Na-solve na daw yung pamamaril sa bus na dalawa ang naging biktima. Tama o mali? Nabasa ko po sa pahayagan. Check nyo nga. Check nyo nga. Service.
My mic is on. Yes, I also watched in the news. Nahuli na yung isa.
Isa. Nahuli na daw isa, Mr. President. So, okay. Good news yun. Good news. Pinupuri ko lang po ating PNP. Ang tanong ko po ganito. Sa pagsolusyon, kahit hindi na banggitin yung pangalan ng suspect because still presumed innocent po yun. Sa pagsolusyon sa krimen na yon, Mr. President, kasi importante talaga masolve ang mga crimes. That's the only way magkaroon ng deterrent effect ang criminal laws natin. Kailangan mapakita ng pulis, nasusolve. Kasi kung hindi nasusolve, kahit i-triple life sentence po yan, walang nasusolve. Natin po yan. Yung pong krimen na yon, sa tingin natin ay nasolusyonan na ng pulis, nakahuli na ng isang suspect. Paano po nakatulong yung structure ng PNP sa pag-solve ng krimen na yon?
Well, the PNP operates as an hierarchical organization, Mr. President. So orders are being given from the top to bottom. So once the PNP said that you have to use all your available resources to solve this particular case, then it goes down the line, Mr. President. So yung pinakamababa na operative, nasa utak niya palagi yan. Aside from considering that case to be their liability, na kailangan talaga na isolve yan, meron pang additional na instructions, additional pressure coming from the chief PNP or from the regional director. So the more na magsusumikap yung ating mga kapulisan na magampanan yung kanilang trabaho, Mr. President.
Sa structure po ng PNP, so, sinong pupuriin natin? Sige. Let us give credit where credit is due. Where is the credit first due, Mr. President?
Well, ang ginawa kasi ng Mr. President ay nagkaroon sila ng fusion of intelligence fusion plus with the cooperation, with the help of the technical expertise of the crime lab. So ang nagbuo nitong task group na who is going after this suspects, Mr. President, is of course the regional director, Mr. President. The regional director was the one who formed the task force.
Okay, so primarily the work of the regional director, may mga directorates ba na involved? May mga support units ba na involved? May mga special police offices ba na involved? May deputies ba na involved? Pwede natin bigyan ng kredito sa pag-solve ng krimen na ito?
Yes, Mr. President, the deputy regional director for operations is on top of the situation, Mr. President. Aside from the regional director himself, as the one who gave the instructions to form the task force, ang nagsusupervise nito is the deputy director, the deputy regional director for operations, Mr. President. So deputy siya.
So from the response of our sponsor, more or less hanggang regional level po ang dapat purihin po natin dito, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Pero may nabanggit po kayong mga crime lab. Ano po itong crime lab? Is it a support unit or a special police office?
It is a national support, national
support?
operational support unit, Mr. President.
That is based in Camp Crame.
Meron tayong down the regions, meron tayong crime lab, Mr. President. So, yung crime lab ng region na yun ang tinap ng regional director. Because all these national operational support units at the regional level are under the operational control of the regional director of the police regional office. So, very vast yung power ng RD na he can mobilize all the existing national operational support units and national administrative support units within his region, within his area of responsibility, Mr. President.
Yes, so kaya sa PNP organization pala, meron tayong mga redundancies or dual or sometimes maybe even more than two jurisdictions to supervision. Kasi yung ating operational support unit na nakabase sa region would be under the regional director and yet under din siya sa deputy chief for operations. Tama po ba yan?
As we go up the ladder of organization, Mr. President, meron yung line of authority, Mr. President. May linya yan na sinusunod hanggang sa pinakataas.
So thank you, Mr. President. Ang importante, tine-check lang natin yung that there should be no inefficiency, no confusion. At this particular case, kung na-solve this, that means we have been efficient, and very clear. Yung isa po, yung isang kaso naman ng Vice Mayor ng Cagayan Valley na na-ambush naman sa Nueva Vizcaya. Bakit hindi pa po ma-solve yun, Mr. President?
I was able to talk to one of the members of the task force, Mr. President, lately. And he told me there are good, positive developments as far as this case is concerned. Nangyari lang is medyo nahirapan talaga sila. But then again, because of the directive coming from the Chief PNP and also the pressure coming from the Senate, particularly the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, ay talaga nagsumikap sa Mr. President. Meron daw talagang magandang development and we hope na cases will be filed against the mastermind. Sabi nila, pwede na malink ang mastermind as of
Yung,
now. Then, pwede na sigurong
kasi, Mr. President, kaya ko natanong niya, kasi kung na-solve natin yung killer sa bus, sa nangyari naman yata sa Nueva Ecija yon, si Regional Director nag-form ng task force, na si Deputy Regional Director ang on top, nagamit lahat ng mga operational support units, etc. Pwede bang kopyahin yan? Pwede bang kopyahin yung sistema na yun for that Nueva Vizcaya incident, Mr. President?
Actually, Mr. President, nasa template na po yan nila ng PNP, yung ganun. Pag merong sensational crime na nangyayari, gagawa kagad sila ng SITG, Special Investigation Task Group, which happened doon sa kaso ng mayor ng Nueva Vizcaya na binaril sa inambos sa Nueva Vizcaya, at saka ito nangyari ngayon sa namamaril sa loob ng bus. But each case has its own peculiarity, Mr. President, and its own challenges. So, kaya nangyari yan na medyo nauna ito hindi pa. So, may mga kayang challenges, Mr. President. But the dedication of the PNP personnel handling these cases remain constant, Mr. President.
In both cases na ginagamit natin na examples, klaro clear ang delineation ng function, yung delegation of the responsibilities, klaro. Dito ba sa Nueva Ecija? Kasi baka klaro, kaya na-solve nila agad. Baka naman dito sa isa, nagkagulo-gulo, may overlap, may nagki-question kung sino may jurisdiction, etc. That is actually my question, Mr. President.
Actually, there's none, Mr. President. As far as what we heard during our hearing, very clear yung delineation of functions, very clear yung fusion of efforts. So, wala po tayo nakita ang ganun, Mr. President. Except na meron na talagang medyo mga challenges.
Peculiarity ng case.
Peculiarity
Yes,
ng case.
alam po natin yun, iba-iba yun.
Yes,
Kasi doon sa bus, may video eh.
Yes.
May video. So, maybe pwedeng we could recognize the face of the perpetrators or the faces of the perpetrators.
Yes, Mr.
Doon sa Nueva Vizcaya, kung meron ng video, malayo eh, Mr. President. Siguro isang concern lang, Mr. President, every budget season, rin-raise ko ito yung sa, yung sa isabong ba yun? Yung nag-disappear, Mr. President. The missing isabongeros, 9 incidents involving 30 plus people. Police claims to have solved 2 to 3 of the incidents, but still 6 to 7 of the incidents are unsolved. I mean, medyo, is the problem with our organization or is the problem with the peculiarity of the crime, Mr. President?
Well, still, peculiarity of the crime, Mr. President, talagang we can say na napakagaling nung gumawa ng krimen na kahit maliit na trace man lang para magkakaroon tayo ng lead for the recovery of the possible recovery of the remains of those 36. Wala talaga, Mr. President, napakagawa. But at least, Mr. President, because of the Senate Committee's investigation, it resulted to the arrest of the following suspects, Mr. President. Ilang security guards? 10 security guards na, Mr. President, ay nakakulong ngayon, facing charges, at saka yung police, merong 5 PNP personnel, 5 police nakakulong ngayon facing charges, Mr. President. Sabi nila, former police officer daw, dahil dismiss na. Dating police.
No, but when they committed the crime,
Police.
Or hindi naman pala committed, when they alleged allegation pa lang ito, di ba? Hindi pa naman sila convicted po, Mr. President.
Hindi pa convicted,
Yes,
Mr. President, pero
Well, unfortunately, hindi ko lubos maisip why would security guards and policemen cause the disappearance of sabong players who were gaming the system. I mean, what is that to them? Mapahiya sila because they are there to physically secure the place, but hindi naman to physical disturbance eh. This is actually a fraud about the game, about the betting. Is that the concern of the security guard? Is that the concern of the police?
Well,
that somebody is able to game the betting system? Mapapahiya sila kung may namaril dun sa area. Physical, kasi physical commotion yun. Physical yun ang kanilang job eh. But to game the system, I don't think that is. I don't think security guards were hired to make sure na walang nakakadaya sa betting, Mr. President.
well, if somebody is promising them monetary consideration, Mr. President, then maybe that will happen. The motive,
Yes,
the motive is money.
yes.
Yeah.
So are we stopping at the level of the security guards?
No, Mr. President, still, it's ongoing. Inihintay na lang, Mr. President, na babaligtad itong mga security guard at ituturo nila yung mastermind. Malaking bagay na po yan at mapipindown yung mastermind, Mr. President. Other than the testimonial evidence na pwede natin makuha doon, yung ibang physical evidence talaga, Mr. President, ay medyo very challenging on the part of the investigators as of now.
Yung mga best investigators po ng PNP, interrogators, who will limit their actions to within lawful parameters, Mr. President? Saan mahanap po yan na directorate ng or unit ng PNP? Sa structure po, saan mahanap?
Well, it is, we can find the best investigators of the PNP within the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group, Mr. President. Isa yung National Operational Support Unit that conducts criminal investigation, Mr. President, especially high-profile cases.
So what then is the function of the Directorate for Investigation and Detective Management, Mr. President?
It is, it collates all the efforts being done by the CIDG and other investigative units of the PNP. Lahat na, yung police regional offices, provincial offices, lahat ng kanilang data, Mr. President, goes up to the level of the Directorate for Investigation and Detective Management, Mr. President.
Who reminds our investigators to keep their methods within lawful means, Mr. President? What unit or directorate or office in the PNP?
I think it's DIDM, Mr. President, Directorate for Intelligence, for Investigation and Detective Management.
Sila
Mr.
po, yan
President.
po. So training, so sila po nag-iisip ng mga training ng ating mga investigador.
And also we have a special office, Mr. President. We call it HRAW, Human Rights Affairs Office. This is going around all the provincial and regional offices, reminding our people, reminding them about the observance of
Paano po sila rini-remind? Memo or face-to-face na may mga lecture?
Aside from memos, there are physical lectures being conducted by HRAW, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the more we are appreciating the structure, the organization of the PNP, yung mga special police officers.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for the inputs from our former chief, the best person to sponsor this bill, Mr. President. Wala nang iba.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Kundi our hardworking chairman of the Public Order Committee. Mr. President, we will now move on page 17 na tayo, section 8, section 30, which amends section 31 of RA 6975 as amended. Ang bago po nating words na pinasok sa 31A is the power to appoint by the APC Commander for APC personnel, Director of National Support Units for National Support Unit personnel. So, ano pong example nitong appointees ng Director of National Support Unit, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the appointment of the officers and members of the PNP shall be effected in the following manner. Patrolman to Police Executive Master Sergeant appointed by the PNP Regional Director for Regional Personnel.
Yes.
APC Commander for APC Personnel, Director of National Support Units for National Support Units, and by the Chief of the PNP for the National Headquarters. Meaning, Mr. President, itong lahat ng mga appointments ng mga non-officers, yung mga patrolwoman, nagsimula, hanggang Executive Master Sergeant, ang nagbibigay po ng appointment orders nito ay the level of the regional directors lang, APC, or yung NUSO or NASO. Unlike the officers, it should be the level of the Chief PNP. Chief PNP nagbibigay ng appointment, Mr. President.
Yes, before the amendment, Mr. President, ang appointment nila by the Regional Director for Regional Personnel, or by the Chief of the PNP for the National Headquarters Personnel, and attested by the Civil Service Commission. Ina-amend natin, dinagdagan natin for the APC Commander at saka si Director of National Support Units.
Yes, Mr. President, to make it clear that the EPC has certain powers. Dahil this is a new creation, this unit is a new creation as far as this particular law is concerned. So, kinlaro natin, Mr. President.
So thank you, Mr. President. No, please notice the last phrase, attested by the Civil Service Commission. So, are there complaints about this attestation from the Civil Service Commission that it is causing delay? Dito po sa mga position sa patrolman, patrolwoman to Police Executive Master Sergeant. Because we are retaining the attestation from the Civil Service Commission.
Mr. President, indeed, it is true that merong mga delay. But kaya natin tinanggal yun, Mr. President, dahil nga...
Hindi natin tinatanggal, sir. We are not removing it. Page 17, line 30. We are not removing it.
17 and 30. Okay. Sorry, Mr. President, I am so advanced. Page 17.
Darating po yung question doon. Kaya linuluto ko pa po yung question doon.
Okay, Mr. President, yeah.
So we are retaining this, Mr. President. No complaints tayo dito.
Yes, Mr. President, no complaints.
No complaints, no
Okay.
delays, no complaints of delays being
May
caused.
delays, Mr. President,
But not enough to complain and not enough to propose the deletion of the attestation from the Civil Service Commission.
Although we have complaints, Mr. President, but we cannot do otherwise because it is a constitutional power of the Civil Service Commission to provide attestation to these all civil servants. First, for first and second level.
Where is that qualification found, Mr. President? Na ang constitutional power niya hanggang first and second levels only.
For a while, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension. Ano na tayo?
Yes.
We are now back in session.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes,
I already have the answer, Mr. President.
Yes, I think we were discussing because the sponsor mentioned the constitutional duty of the Civil Service Commission to involve itself in the appointments of civil servants. I think that is the main idea coming from the sponsor. Now, my question is, that is why there is this old rule of the attestation coming from the Civil Service Commission for appointments in the police, in the PNP, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. In line with that, Mr. President, the Civil Service Commission issued a resolution to the effect that the ones covered by the commission, by the Civil Service Commission, are those only first and second level government employees, excluding the third level employees from colonel and up, because they are presidential appointees, Mr. President. So they are not covered by the civil service.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. President. So now we now go to the police colonel and up.
Yes.
That's page 18, line 6, which is section 31, paragraph C. Dito po tayo, na-discuss natin ito kahapon na nagbabago tayo ng rule. Okay. Consciously, is that right, Mr. President? Consciously, that the committee really wanted to change the rule here, Mr. President, that the proper endorsement for these presidential appointees will now come from the chairman of the commission. And the commission means the NAPOLCOM.
Yes, Mr. President.
And the chairman is the Secretary of the Interior and Local Government, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is this now the first time for the Secretary of the DILG to have a direct involvement in the running of the PNP or in the appointment of PNP officials or officers, Mr. President?
Well, in his capacity as the chairman of the National Police Commission, Mr. President, he has been doing that ever since.
Since when, Mr. President? And what would be the legal basis for? And what has he been doing, Mr. President? May we be clarified?
The endorsement, Mr. President, the endorsement of...
So, ibig sabihin, Mr. President, matagal na pala nating hindi ino-observe itong endorsement by the chairman of the Civil Service Commission?
Well, it has been observed, Mr. President, sabay sila, may endorsement coming from... Kaya nga sabi ko, kawawa ang PNP dahil ang daming nag-govern na agency, may NAPOLCOM na, may civil service pa. So mayroong endorsement ang civil service, mayroong ding endorsement ang NAPOLCOM, nanggagaling sa NAPOLCOM.
Yes, and our amendment will now do away with the endorsement from the Civil Service.
Yes, Mr. President.
Why did we have this in the first place, Mr. President, as a rule? Ano bang history nitong provision na ito? Bakit in-involve si civil service? Involved na siya sa attestation. Ang explanation po nating sponsor, levels 1 and 2, pagdating ng presidential appointees, hindi na in-involve si civil service sa attestation, pero involved pa rin siya as far as the police colonel and above are concerned in the endorsement, Mr. President. That is the current state of the law. And we want to do away with the involvement of the chairman of the Civil Service Commission. So may we know the rationale why we did this in the first place so that we will appreciate kung tama ba na alisin sa picture ang chairman of the Civil Service Commission.
Yes, Mr. President, because yun nga, according to the resolution coming from the civil service, itong mga third level officers of the PNP are not covered by the civil service rules, being presidential appointees. So,
May we get the date, Mr. President, the resolution?
resolution is dated 10 August 2010, Mr. President.
August 10, 2010. But does that, so did the CSC in the year 2010, through that resolution, waive its role in the endorsement of police colonel and above, Mr. President?
1 minute suspension, Mr.
A minute
President.
suspension, Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. President,
Yes, yes.
I would like to answer the question, the historical background. Why was the civil service was involved in the endorsement? Mr. President, according to the Constitution, the Philippine National Police is a civilian in character, national in scope. So, nung lumabas yung RA 6975, it is our assumption na since the PNP is already a civilian in nature, civilian organization, kaya nilagay nila ito sa batas na ang endorsement ay dadaan sa civil service. But later on, lumabas yung mga Supreme Court ruling na ang third level hindi na dapat sakop ng civil service. So, kung hindi sila sakop sa mga attestation ng mga process, why involve them in the endorsement? So, to simplify the process, dahil nga nagreklamo na yan ng mga kapulisan na talagang nagtatagal doon sa civil service dahil napakalaki po ang civil service na tinutukan ng komisyon. Mas minabuti na sana ibigay na itong power na ito sa Napolcom. Dahil ang Napolcom talaga nakatutok lang sa PNP.
Thank you, Mr. President. But allow me to read Article 9B, Section 2 of the 1987 Constitution sa paragraph 1. The civil service embraces all branches, subdivisions, instrumentalities, and agencies of the government, including government-owned or controlled corporations with original charters. So, I believe that this definition of the civil service embraces includes the Philippine National Police, Mr. President. So, even the PNP General is a civil servant, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President,
So-
I agree. I agree with you, Mr. President. But I just would like to read also Article 6 of the General Provisions of the 1987 Constitution that states, the states shall establish and maintain one police force which shall be national in scope and civilian in character, to be administered and controlled by a national police commission. The authority of local executives over the police units and their jurisdiction shall be provided by law. So, to be administered and controlled by a national police commission, Mr. President. Sinabi dito.
Yes, Mr. President. Nakita ko. So, we will so either way, Mr. President, is the sponsor agreeing with this representation that either way it would be constitutional? If we retain the endorsement coming from the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, that would be constitutional. And if we amend, and now the endorsement should come from the chairman of the commission, which is the NAPOLCOM, that's also constitutional, Mr. President.
Yes, I agree, Mr. President, because both of them are covered by constitutional provisions.
And the reality on the ground now is that there are two endorsements for appointees of these high positions, Mr. President. Tama? The first endorsement comes from NAPOLCOM, and then the PNP still observes the existing law that endorsement should also come from the Civil Service Commission.
Correct, Mr. President.
So parang yung authority naman ng NAPOLCOM to endorse would be based on what law, Mr. President? Kasi wala siya rito, hindi siya klaro po rito sa Section 31 of RA 6975 as amended by RA 11200, Mr. President. Paragraph C, 31C, hindi siya no mention of the NAPOLCOM po rito. So and yet in reality, nag-endorse na si NAPOLCOM. So may we know the legal basis of the actions of the NAPOLCOM?
Legal basis.
Attestation.
Yeah, Mr. President, according to Section 5 of RA 8551. This is about the organization and composition of the National Police Commission. For Section 6, Mr. President, the powers and functions of the Commission, subparagraph A, develop policies and promulgate a police manual prescribing rules and regulations for efficient organization, administration, and operation, including criteria for manpower allocation, distribution and deployment, recruitment, selection, promotion, and retirement of personnel, and the conduct of qualifying entrance and promotional examinations for uniformed members. So, may dagdag pa yan, Mr. President.
So,
Ito, letter B, Mr. President, may dagdag pa. Advise the President on all matters involving police functions and administration. Subparagraph B of Section 5. Section 5.
so dyan po tayo, yan po ang mga legal provisions kung saan naka-anchor itong ating proposed amendment to Section 31, Paragraph C of RA number 6975 as amended by RA 11200. Yan po, dalawa.
Yes, Mr. President.
How come our proposed amendment now seeks the endorsement from the chairman of the commission and not from the commission? The commission is a collegial body, Mr. President.
Yes, I agree, Mr.
How
President.
many people, Mr. President?
We are going to amend this particular provision, Mr. President, and replace it with commission.
Okay.
Yeah. Nauna na po, naka-read na po yung ating amendment
okay
dyan,
po.
Mr. President.
So,
I read your mind, Mr. President.
so, Napolcom. So, okay, the endorsement is now tanggalin talaga ang involvement na ng CSC, but i-involve na po ang Napolcom as a collegial body sa commission. Well, at any rate, Mr. President, sana, I hope we got the parang position of the Civil Service Commission. Sana. Wala po, no? I asked this question before, wala eh. Wala eh.
We invited them during the hearing, Mr. President, but they don't interpose any objection as far as this particular measure is concerned. So wala po silang binigay na position paper objecting any particular provision of this measure, Mr. President.
So thank you for that, Mr. President. We can move on now to Section 9 of our bill. Ito po yung amending Section 32 of RA 8551. Promotion by virtue of position. Meron, ang ibig sabihin po na, ang impression that I get is there is a normal way of promoting the police officers. This is a special way of promoting an officer that you appoint. The officer is appointed to a position which requires a rank higher than what he or she has, Mr. President, and then because by virtue of that appointment to the position, he or she gets promoted, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
What would be the normal way, not this way, by virtue of position? What would be the normal way of promoting a police officer?
Well, this is the normal way already, Mr. President. This is the normal way.
Actually, Mr. President, ito nga ang worry ko rito, nasabi ko, would this not circumvent the normal procedure for promotion? So, the normal way is you promote an officer to a position which requires a higher rank, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, because the organization is limited by the number of positions corresponding to a particular rank. So, meaning, I am a police colonel. Just to illustrate, Mr. President, I am a police colonel. I have been holding this rank for quite some time already. Kung tutuusin, dapat na-promote ako ngayon. But according to our organizational uniqueness, hindi ako pwede ma-promote ng Brigadier General unless makapwesto ako ng isang pwesto that calls for the rank of Brigadier General. Dahil it would be useless, no? Sayang yung gagastos sa gobyerno. Babayaran ako ng sweldo ng Police Brigadier General na wala man akong pwesto na pang general. Dito lang ako, paupo-upo lang ako. So, dapat makapwesto ka muna bago kita i-promote para magamit mo yung ranggo na yan at masweldohan ka according to your rank.
So, because Section 32 is entitled Promotion by Virtue of Position, so gives me the impression that there must be another way of promoting, Mr. President.
No, ang tinanggal na natin dito, Mr. President, is yung 6 months na occupying the same, yung tinanggal natin dahil nga itong 6 months nagiging unfair ito sa police dahil within 6 months, maraming mag-retire dyan, no, apektado sa edad, hindi sila mapopromote. Dahil naghintay pa tayo ng 6 months bago siya ipopromote.
So this is the plan, Mr. President. So, ang ibig natin sabihin, lahat ng ating mga police officers, since it is always promotion by virtue of position, according
Yes.
to our sponsor, so they all have assignments, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Naka-fix na kasi yung yung organizational structure ng PNP wherein dyan binabase yung budget ng DBM for PS, for personnel services, Mr. President. So, dyan na nakabase yung ating budget.
So now we go to the issue raised by the DBM, Mr. President, last September 2023, that the government is paying 26.7 billion pesos yearly for the PNP's 66,203 excess positions, Mr. President. So, meron daw excess positions sa PNP, Mr. President. So, ang sabi pa nga rito, Lieutenant General, meron daw ang PNP 8, kailangan 3 lang. So, sa Major General, meron daw 17, pero dapat 11 lang daw, sabi ng DBM. So, and then sa Brigadier General, dapat 86 lang, pero meron tayong 110 Brigadier General. So, ang sasagot po ng ating sponsor earlier, ibig sabihin nun, lahat ito, 110 Brigadier Generals, they have 110 positions in the PNP requiring the rank of Brigadier General.
Well, Mr. President, according to my advisors here, that particular finding was already reconciled, Mr. President. Na-correct na daw yan as of late. Naayos na daw yan, Mr. President.
In
Yung
what way,
particular finding na
in what way, Mr. President? Kasi September po ito, 2023.
While waiting for the answer of that particular question, Mr. President, let me read itong on the issue on alleged technical malversation, what is the factual background, legal basis, and who would be responsible for it? Ito na yung sagot dyan sa issue niya, Mr. President. The answer is all positions in the PNP are in accordance with RA 6975, RA number 8551, and or through an appropriate NAPOLCOM resolution pursuant to the legal authority of the committee provided under RA number 6975 as amended. Moreover, promotion for third-level officers from the ranks of police colonel to police general is approved by the President as the appointing authority. Likewise, third-level PCO positions in the PNP are pursuant to appropriate appointment orders issued by the Office of the President, being the Chief Executive. By reason thereof, the utilization of funds is for authorized personnel benefits is provided by law. Ito po yung naging sagot ng PNP dyan, Mr. President.
We will just write the DBM, Mr. President, kung talaga bang ano na to.
Okay, Mr. President.
Resolve na po ito,
Yeah.
Mr. President.
We can
But is it true? How many brigadier generals do we have as of the moment, Mr. President?
We have 121 Police Brigadier General, Mr. President.
So dumami pa pala from the report, Mr. President.
That is the authorized strength, Mr. President. 121, but the actual is only 101.
Yes.
101 kasi kulang pa, hindi pa na-promote yung iba na nakapwisto.
So, according to our sponsor, 121 ang authorized brigadier generals. Ang sa news report ko, DBM approved only 86. So, we will have to accept the sponsor's inputs, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so with that, Mr. President. So, nakita ko nga, Mr. President, that we have been creating a lot of positions na for brigadier generals dito po sa ating so ganun ba ang nangyari, Mr. President, that because medyo dumami na po yung due for promotion, we had to create NAPOLCOM and the PNP had to create these positions, Mr. President, and then natauhan ngayon ng Brigadier General. Kaya kailangan natin itong batas. As earlier stated, ay pahabol natin yung law as to the realities on the ground, Mr. President.
No, Mr. President, that would be a very unsound management practice if the PNP is doing that. But actually, the real, what is really happening is that the creation of these positions were based on the demands of the ground. Kapag, halimbawa, wala doon yan, sa RA 6975, yung PDEG, yung Police Drug Enforcement Group. Ngayon, lumakas yung problema sa droga. So, in order to respond to the drug problem, the PNP created the Police Drug Enforcement Group. So, that depends on the demands of the ground, but not really, as you have stated a while ago, that just to satisfy the personnel within the PNP na, oy, ito, mapopromote na ito. Kailangan mag-create tayo ng position para dito dahil para ma-promote siya. Hindi po yan ginagawa, Mr. President. Unlike some politicians na pag lumaki na yung anak niya na pwede na mag-mayor, hatiin natin itong munisipyo para maging mayor itong aking anak. At walang ganun, Mr. President. That's,
Thank you for mentioning PDEG, Mr. President, kasi may tanong nga ako actually dyan. So, sige nga, let's go through the thought processes. Bakit kailangan natin si PDEG, Police Drug Enforcement Group, knowing that we already have a specialized agency, Mr. President, na PDEA, Mr. President?
well, no, Mr. President. Padilla is the lead agency as far as drug problem is concerned. Now, according to the Padilla law, the Padilla can tawag yan, the term is deputize the PNP for drug enforcement. So, minabuti ng PNP, since we are being deputized by Padilla, kaya dati naman talaga yung function ng PNP yung Padilla. Before nagkaroon ng Padilla, meron na tayong PC Constabulary Anti-Narcotics Unit ng PNP, meron na tayong ginawa nating meron tayong ginawang EDSOT, Anti-Illegal Drugs Special Operation Task Force. And later on, ginawa itong PDEG, Mr. President, just to support the drug mandate of the PDEA. So, na-create itong PDEG.
Kasi kulang din sa manpower si PDEA.
Kulang talaga, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you for that input, Mr. President. The more we appreciate the organization of the PNP. So, moving on, Mr. President, can I bring the attention of the sponsor to page 19, line 30, yung paragraph na po yun na starting on line 30, all the way to page 20, line 15. That paragraph, which I find very difficult to understand, Mr. President, if the sponsor can explain to this representation what is the main idea in that paragraph, Mr. President. Lateral entry.
Lateral entry, Mr. President. In general, or all original appointments of commission officers in the PNP shall commence with the rank of...
Yung second paragraph na po, naintindihan ko po yung first paragraph ng section 33. That's the second one, yung proposed amendment po natin. What does that mean, Mr. President?
In the lateral entry, Mr. President? In the lateral entry for line officers,
Yes, yan po.
program, licensed criminologists, other professionals who have licenses issued by the police, by the Professional Regulatory Commission, or those with eligibility issued by the Commission may be appointed to the rank of police lieutenant to fill up vacancies in the PNP line units. provided that licensed criminologists and other PRC licensed professionals to include those with eligibility issued by the Commission who are applying for lateral entry line officership are already members of the PNP with a rank of at least police staff sergeant or uniform personnel, or at least salary grade 14 or NUP, and have served the organization for at least 5 years, provided further that these police lieutenants in the line services shall serve at least 5 years in the line offices units they opted to join before they can seek reassignment to other line offices. Graduates of the Philippine National Police.
Yes, okay na po yung last paragraph. Yeah. That's easy to understand. Ito pong second paragraph po, ano pong gusto ma-achieve natin dito po, Mr. President? Ano NUP? For NUP, grade 40. Page 20. Page 20, ha? Okay, okay.
Yeah, Mr. President, this particular provision is that we want to achieve the following, Mr. President. No, we want to be clear that the lateral entry for officers, dalawa pong method yan, itong dalawang classification, yung technical at saka line officers. Yung technical officers na yan yung mga pare, mga doktor, mga engineer, mga pilot na gustong pumasok sa service. Yung line officers naman, Mr. President, hindi ito technical. Ito yung ordinaryong regular police. So, sila yung line. At kasi noon, ang presently, ang tinatanggap na magiging eligible for line officers at present are only licensed criminologists are eligible as candidates for appointment. The bill proposes to include other PRC licensed professionals and those with NAPOLCOM eligibility for appointment to the initial rank of police lieutenant. So, nilawakan natin, Mr. President, dahil sayang yung iba na pwede nating matanggap sa PNP na magagaling at magandang background kasi nililimit lang natin sa ngayon yung doon sa mga criminologists.
Thank you, Mr. President. That really helped this representation in understanding this paragraph. There is a phrase here, Mr. President, same paragraph, or those with eligibility issued by the Commission. Pero it immediately follows kasi the phrase with the mention of the Professional Regulation Commission. So in this phrase, or those with eligibility issued by the Commission, what commission are we referring to, Mr. President?
It's NAPOLCOM, Mr.
NAPOLCOM,
President.
okay.
NAPOLCOM.
Thank you, Mr. President. Consistent with the rule that when the law mentions commission, it's the NAPOLCOM, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. President. So now, Mr. President, pages 20 to the rest of page 20 all the way to page 24 are deletions, Mr. President. And then the deletions are proposed to be replaced by entries about national administrative and operational support units, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
In effect, kung tutusin, yung deleted natin are also national administrative and operational support units. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Correct, Mr. President.
So why? And then we're replacing them with. Are we replacing them with units with new names, or are we redefining the functions or jurisdiction of the support units, Mr. President?
Mr. President, some of the names of these units were updated.
Okay.
Updated, and some of the functions ng units ay redefined, Mr. President. So, minabuti natin na tanggalin na lang ito lahat, palitan ng bago, but still, the same organizations are being...
As to number of support units, parehas po. Parehas sa administrative support units, same number?
It's increased, Mr. President.
Oh, which are the new ones, Mr. President?
Saan ang bago ito? Like for example, the national support units, ang nakasabi lang dito sa RA 6975 ay for administrative support units, crime lab, logistics unit, communications unit. Actually, Mr. President, yung ito nga, Mr. President, from administrative support unit, yung crime lab, nilipat natin sa operational support unit at rename it from crime lab to forensic group, Mr. President. So ang bago nito ngayon, aside from crime lab, logistics unit, communications unit, computer service, computer center, finance center, and cyber security unit, anong nadagdag yung bago sa NASO? Wait, dadagdagan natin ang PRBS, Mr. President, yung Police Retirement Benefits Service. Saka? And Headquarters Support Service.
Okay, so at least
And Legal Service, Mr. President.
legal service, ngayon lang po natin ma-recognize.
Yes, Mr. President. Kasi noon, parang walang yan eh. Office lang yan under the chief of the PNP. Ngayon, ginawa nating service talaga.
Sige, happy po ating mga kumpanyero, Mr. President, nagiging career na nila. Ang nabanggit po nating sponsor would be the administrative support units. How about sa operational support units? May bago po ba? Ano pong pagbabago ginawa natin dito?
Yes, Mr. President. Ang mga bago dyan ay Women's and Children's Protection Group, yung PIDIG, Drug Enforcement Group, Mr. President. Bago yan. Anti-Kidnapping Group, yung IMEG,
Yes, thank you.
EOD-K9, mga bago po yan, Mr. President, covered by Napolcom Resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Existing but through NAPOLCOM resolution. So gawin
Correct,
natin
Mr.
by
President.
law. Yes.
Correct.
Mr. President, ito pong sa page 25, line 4, ito po yung opening statement natin. The National Administrative and Operational Support Units shall initially consist of the following. Ang concern ko po is yung ano pong importance ng word na initially, Mr. President.
Because, Mr. President, we know the criminal world and the policing environment is evolving, Mr. President. So, minabuti natin na pwede pa ito madagdagan in the future, Mr. President. In the future.
Sino po ang pwede magdagdag?
Section. Saan dito? Saan? Mr. President, if I may read, no? To enhance operational efficiency and effectiveness, sustain the attainment of increased police visibility, and optimize delivery of police services, the Chief of the PNP may constitute, abolish, modify, or merge PNP units and offices or otherwise implement necessary adjustments in the organizational structure, staffing, functions, and functional relationship, including the corresponding changes in the number and distribution of the ranks upon approval of the Commission. Approval of the Commission, provided that no office headed by a police brigadier general or higher shall be created unless provided by law. So, very clear to Mr. President, in the future, as the need arise, the Chief PNP may create a new unit provided hindi ito to be occupied by a police brigadier general. Hanggang police colonel lang, Mr. President. So,
But I noticed, Mr. President, lahat itong na-create nating administrative support units at operational support units in our bill are all headed by at least Police Brigadier General.
yes, Mr. President. Yeah.
So it would be an anomaly sa section of, sa provision of law read by our sponsor. Ang ibig sabihin, the Chief PNP with the concurrence of the Commission can create another administrative support unit or another operational support unit for as long as wag niyang ipahead ang Police Brigadier General. Is that our interpretation?
Yes, Mr. President, because in the exigency of the service, kung talagang kinakailangan na na i-address yung particular threat or particular situation na kailangan mag-create ng unit, okay, pwede ka mag-create ng unit provided hindi Police Brigadier General. And now, after that, we can institutionalize that particular unit through legislation. O hingi sila ng power through Congress to create this unit, establish ito at to be headed by a Brigadier General. So yun lang, Mr. President, para bang habang wala pang legislation, pwede siya gumawa to address a particular threat, particular problem, particular issue.
Using the provision that our sponsor
Yes, Mr.
read,
President.
So thank you for that, Mr. President.
And pwede rin mag-dissolve, Mr. President.
Yes,
nakita
pwede ba niyang i-merge ang dalawang created by our bill?
Pwede, Mr. President.
So one Brigadier General will lose a job, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Ganun talaga.
Yeah, kung nakita
Ganun talaga.
Oh,
Ganun talaga.
depende
Okay.
sa
Exigency of
sitwasyon.
the service. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
exigency
Thank
of
you.
the service.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. President. Can we go to page 31, Mr. President? Malapit na po tayo matapos.
Yes, Mr. President.
Line 11, number 4, Anti-Cybercrime Group. Ito po ay bago o hindi? Ito po ay isang operation support unit. Yes, page 31.
31.
Cybercrime Group, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, bago ito,
Bago, opo.
but it is covered by law. RA 10175, the Anti-Cybercrime Act. So, bago siya, pero covered by law.
Bakit kailangan natin banggitin, sir? Baka naman itong nasa law na when we restate it, baka magkamali pa tayo.
Yung restructuring lang, Mr. President, yung structure niya at saka
101 solid number.
yung rank, Mr. President. Kaya ka pala, restate natin.
Bakit? Bakit po natin na kailangan i-restate, Mr. President, kung the law already creates this? Meron bang insufficiency sa RA 10175?
Talagay ba dun sa batas na? Well, Mr. President, yung structure na, Mr. President, no, na it has to be headed by a general,
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes,
The law was silent.
I've seen the section of the law, Mr. President, and I think the creation of this group is implementing the law. So
Yes, thank you,
that's
Mr.
good. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the anti-cybercrime group, which should help our DICT, Mr. President. Kaya ba nila? Can they help the DICT in the hacking cases, in the other cybercrimes, Mr. President?
Correct, Mr. President. Correct.
Yes, kaya nga, this is one reason why we should not grant, and I think we did not grant the CIF request of the DICT. Kasi meron na tayong anti-cybercrime group, Mr. President.
Precisely,
Kaya
Mr.
na
President.
nila.
I agree with you. I agree.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. President. Ayun na. So, it's
Because,
good.
Mr. President, if I may, I think the ICT, they should limit themselves to policy making.
Policy, yes,
And for implementation and actual anti-cybercrime operations, this is the work of the police. So, I agree with you.
And that same law mentioned by our sponsor also tasks the NBI to have its own
Correct, Mr.
anti-cybercrime. So,
President.
doble-doble na po. So, tama po yun. Nakatipid na po tayo sa CIF by not granting the request of the ICT. Hindi ba rin? Nag-grant tayo. Nag-grant million na din. Double check natin. Mr. President, page 32, line 7, paragraph 7, Aviation Security Group. Since binabago na rin naman natin yung batas, in-improve na natin yung wording ng mga batas, alam ko po na merong gray area o may friction o may conflict si Aviation Security Group sa Airport Authority, Mr. President. So I hope na since ginagawa na natin batas, I hope that the updated paragraph will already address that issue, Mr. President.
Thank you for that reminder, Mr. President. I will read again for possible amendment to improve.
So I think I'm glad that the
security-
sponsor recalls the incident.
Yes,
Sa
Mr. President.
Sa report po natin. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you for reminding me, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's now go to page 33, Mr. Line 29, paragraph 11, our Police Security and Protection Group. Ito po ang ating they can authorize the giving of protection to private individuals, Mr. President. Okay ito in concept, Mr. President, pero sa implementation, hindi ba parang maraming mga pogo na mga executive, mas marami pa security sa mga elected officials, Mr. President. Does the sponsor confirm this, Mr. President, na nangyayari ito?
Yes, Mr. President, I confirm na may mga ganyan na mga police minsan na natawag natin moonlighting. Some of them are not sanctioned by the unit, Mr. President. With the issue of the POGO that is very hot right now, no director of the PSPG is foolish enough to assign people to POGO personalities. They will be in hot water, Mr. President. Kung mayroon mang police ngayon na makikita natin nag-escort sa POGO, they are not sanctioned by their unit. They are moonlighting and they are subject to criminal or administrative sanctions by the PNP.
Yes, okay. For as long as hindi pala taxpayers' money yung sweldo nila, Mr. President.
But I would like to remind Your Honor, Mr. President, that meron din diyang purma-purma na police, pero hindi talaga yung police, Mr. President. Alam natin yan, kung makaasta, akala mo police, pero hindi pala police yun.
And then we have our own office, Mr. President, di ba? To regulate all of these people providing security services, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
What would be that office, Mr. President?
Police Security and Protection Group, Mr. President.
Sila din ba, Mr. President?
to supervise the security agencies
No.
and all of those people. So what if
It's SOSYA, Mr. President.
ano po yun? Is that
Under Civil Security Group.
is that an administrative support unit or an operational support unit?
Operational Support Unit, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then, Mr. President, can you go to page 35, line 6, on the Integrity Monitoring and Enforcement Group. May we be clarified as to the difference between IMEG and IAS, Mr. President, sa functions po nila?
Well, Mr. President, IAS are limited to filing criminal and administrative cases against hearing personnel. Pero yung on the ground talaga na nagkakandak ng law enforcement operations, entrapment, basta operations, actual police operations, Mr. President, it's the job of the IMEG.
Against their own
Their own
PNP
people.
yeah?
Yes, Mr. President. If there are reports
Okay, so-
that these people are involved in shenanigans, Mr. President, automatic na nagkakandak na operations ng IMEG.
So the actual physical day-to-day action is IMEG, the legal action is IAS.
Correct, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. So hindi na sa ilalim ni IAS si IMEG, Mr. President?
No, Mr. President. It is one of the operational support unit.
Yes, and then IAS is, we consider
IAS is sa taas, Mr. President.
as a special police office.
Special Police Office under the Office of the Chief NP.
So paano to, Mr. President? With the detachment of the two, Mr. President, are they expected to closely coordinate, Mr. President?
They're mandated to coordinate with IAS, Mr. President.
Is it working, Mr. President? Is it working now?
Yes, Mr. President. Maraming police operations na ginawa ang IMEG against hearing personnel na IAS ngayon nag-case build up at nag-file ng kaso. Sila may hawak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then dito na po tayo sa isang, which is also a very substantive portion of our, or part of our bill, Mr. President. Page 36, line 20 on section 13 of our bill, which amends section 39 of RA 69 75 as amended by RA 11200, Mr. President. So ito po isa sa mga substantive elements po ng ating proposal po, Mr. President. We are increasing the compulsory retirement age, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. We just pattern it after the retirement age of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the MUP pension reform that 57 ang retirement, Mr. President. So, synchronize lang po natin, Mr. President.
So our MUP bill na hindi pa po pasado, 57 na po ang naka-envision,
Yes.
Mr. President. But then, Mr. President, meron tayong the commission, which is the NAPOLCOM, has the authority to extend, tama? Extend the service of the supposed to be compulsorily retired officer by 1 year, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. And, bakit nilagay pa natin kung existing ito? Okay. This existing provision of law, Mr. President.
Yes, correct.
Kinote
Mr.
lang natin.
President. Okay, Mr. President. So actually, Mr. President, pagka umabot ka na sa Police Brigadier General and higher, ready ka dapat up to age 58?
Ready ka, Mr. President, if the commission
This is optional. This is optional.
Optional.
Upon application po ito. Upon application by the supposed to be compulsorily retired officer.
hindi siguro pa application, Mr. President. Wala pa naman so far, wala pang nangyaring ganito, Mr. President. Pero yun lang, binigyan lang natin ng leeway yung commission. Baka pagdating sa panahon, kagaya nung nangyari yung Marawi Siege, ongoing yung gira, tapos pag-retire na yung ground commander doon sa Marawi, meron tayong elbow room na pwede siyang extend yung retirable, Mr. President. Pero so far, wala pa. Wala pang...
Yes, ano kaya ang tanong theory nito, Mr. President? With the consent of the person being extended, Mr. President? Whose service is being extended?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
With his
Yes.
or her consent?
Yes.
Tama.
Yes.
Okay, thank
When he
you.
says na I am already compulsorily retired, wala na ko intention pa na magserbisyo, then walang pilitan ito, Mr. President.
Yes. Ito pong age 57 po, nakonsulta po natin ito sa ating kapulisan.
Yes, Mr. President.
And wala po bang contrary position na 56 lang dapat kasi pumasok kami dyan, na ano ko na yung buhay ko na hanggang 56, gusto ko maging private citizen, back to my family, etc. Mr. President.
Right now, Mr. President, unanimous yung reaksyon ng kapulisan. Noon lang, meron silang narinig na bakit pa extend ang 57, dapat retire tayo 56 because of their intention to evade the possible enactment of yung MUP Act, Mr. President, na takot sila na baka daw matanggalan sila ng pension, tapos yung one rank higher, mawalan sila ng ganun na mga privileges. So gusto nilang madaliin na retirable na ako, 56 dapat retire na. Pero ngayon naklaro na maraming nagbawi daw ng optional retirement na application papers, Mr. President. Binawi nila.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Pero ano rin ito, it's one year additional service, and when you're in service, iba pong buhay ng in service retired po, Mr. President. For as long as with eyes open, okay lang po yan. Mr. President, page 37 na po tayo on internal discipline, line 3. On lines 3 to 5, meron po tayong deletion. We are deleting the introductory phrase reading on dealing with minor offenses involving internal discipline found to have been committed by any regular member of the respective commands, tinanggal po natin yon. Why? What is the purpose of this deletion, Mr. President?
Yeah, Mr. President, the breach of internal discipline, Mr. President, does not only consist of minor offenses.
Yes.
Maraming mga grave offenses, Mr. President. So, kaya natin ito dinilit.
Yes, so ibig sabihin nun, the current state of the law, minor offenses lang pala ang na-envision, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, based on the language of the current law.
Yes, the current law.
So,
Okay.
minabuti natin na pabigatin natin ito, Mr.
Opo,
President.
dahil dinilit na natin ito, lahat na.
Lahat na.
Yes, yes, sir. Okay po, lahat na po. Opo. Ngayon po, in this section 41 ito of RA 6775 as amended by RA 8551, ito po ina-amend natin. We're introducing new paragraphs, Mr. President. This time, the Chief PNP shall have the power or authority to immediately order the preventive confinement of any PNP personnel under investigation for or charged with a grave administrative offense and or crime. First question, Mr. President. Yung word na grave, page 38, line 13, grave, does that define administrative offense or kasama din po yung crime doon? That crime is all found in, the word crime found on page 38, line 14 is also qualified by the word grave, Mr. President.
Well, for admin offenses ito, Mr. President, but meron namang katapat yung admin case sa criminal, like for example, murder. Ang murder is a grave offense classification under the administrative.
Kasi and/or crime po ito eh. So the PNP personnel could be under investigation for a crime, but must the crime be also a grave crime, Mr. President?
Any crime, Mr. President.
Any crime. So the word grave only qualifies administrative offense, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. President. Ngayon, this is new because under existing law, although may power na rin si Chief PNP yata to impose disciplinary punishment, Mr. President, what's the difference with our new paragraph?
Yung ito, Mr. President, ang diferensya, yung preventive confinement.
Yes, wala po sa existing law.
Wala sa existing law, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Kaya marami tayong pulis abusado dahil sabi nila, hindi man tayo pwede kulong yan dahil due process pa rin. Talaga,
Tama.
due process ito.
Actually, Mr. President, sa existing law, subject lahat yon sa after due notice and summary hearing, Mr. President. Tama?
Yes, Mr.
Using
President.
the power of the PNP chief.
Yes.
That's correct, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, the second paragraph that we are introducing as an amendment gives the area police commanders, regional directors, provincial directors, district directors, and chiefs of police the same power, the same authority over PNP personnel under their command, the same as the Chief PNP, Mr. President. Ang authority is to immediately order the preventive confinement of their personnel, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
The paragraph does not mention now the length of the maximum period for the confinement. What would be the rule for the area police commanders down, Mr. President? Meron din sila maximum?
Maximum of 90 days, Mr. President.
Okay, so 90 days din po. Found
Yes.
in the maximum period found in the first paragraph is applicable to the second paragraph.
Yes, Mr. President.
Meron pong qualification dito unless sa second paragraph po yung authority ng ating area police commanders etc. And unless otherwise ordered by the chief PNP. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? That the chief PNP will order them not to preventively confine, Mr. President?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Okay.
Yes. That the President, the Chief PNP can countermand the order of the subordinate commander. Baka nakita niya na baka nag-abuso itong commander na ito. Na baka mamaya sabi niya, personalan na ito. Pinulong niya dahil yun nga, for personal reason. So the Chief PNP can countermand the order of that subordinate commander.
Yun na nga, Mr. President. Parang nakukulangan nga ako ng parang safeguards natin for the possible abuse of this new power, Mr. President. I hope the sponsor is still open kung makaisip tayo ng paraan
Yes, Mr. President, please help us.
Well, there's one way nga, yung review sa Chief PNP, pero, you know, kung nasa Mindanao nangyari ito na munisipyo kasama munisipyo po, Mr. President, right? Mr. President, kasama.
Yes, Chief of Police.
Yes,
The Chief of Police.
Isang munisipyo na napakalayo and then Camp Crame is here in Quezon City, Mr. President. Yung baka, the need only one review, Mr. President, which is the Chief PNP. So then, we must think of ways to put more safeguards against possible abuse, Mr.
I think, we can do it in a manner, Mr. President, that the provincial director can countermand the confinement order of the Chief of Police. And going up, Mr. President, baka pwedeng ganun. Di ba?
Yes, Mr. President. Basta, mayroon na, ang takot lang natin, baka personalan, alam na, Mr. President. Baka for personal reasons.
Yes, Mr. President. So,
Ayoko lang magamit yung this is a new power, Mr. President, that we're giving. The
Yes,
authority to order immediate confinement. That's a new power. Tama po. So, we better have safeguards, Mr. President. Ngayon, may last point, Mr. President. Last point na po.
yes po. Thank you, Mr. President.
Congratulations to our sponsor. Thank you for the patience, Mr. President.
That's very important, Mr. President, because this is a very important
Last 2
law.
points pala, Mr. President. Section 15, page 39, Congressional Oversight Committee. Bakit po nalimutan na naman natin ang minority, Mr. President?
Well, this assumes the usual hindi lang nilagay ito, Mr. President, pero if you want to
Yes, we will introduce language, Mr. President.
Yeah, we have to
ensure minority representation.
Yes, Mr.
Always,
President.
Mr. President,
Always.
in a Congressional Oversight Committee.
Okay, Mr. President. We can amend this.
Medyo madalas-dalas na pong nalilimutan kasi, sir.
Correct, Mr. President.
Then Mr. President, last na po sa repealing clause natin, just for us to be very aware. The repealing clause mentions 2 sections. Talagang expressly repealed po ito. What is section 35-A that we are of RA 6975 as amended by RA 11279, which we are expressly repealing?
Mr. President, just to avoid redundancy, Mr. President, if we are not going to repeal this particular provisions of
This is about the National Police
National
Training
Police Training Institute.
Oh, saan po siya posibleng redundant, Mr. President? What is the NPTI? Is that a special police office, a directorate, an administrative support unit, or
It
an
is-
operational support unit?
National Administrative Support Unit, Mr. President.
And what is another office or unit taking its place, Mr. President?
The same unit, Mr. President. So, ni-reorganize natin yung list ng mga NASO, Mr. President, at dinagdag natin ito, yung NPTI.
Yung kanyang responsibility po, na-retain po natin.
Yes, Mr. President.
The same.
The same.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then how about section 67A, Mr. President?
It's about the PNPA, Mr. President.
Yes, hindi ba delikado na i-repeal natin yung section about the PNPA, Mr. President?
Nilipat na natin, Mr. President, to Special Police Office, pero yung functions niya, practically the same, Mr. President.
The wording of section 67-A we have retained in the bill, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President. The same.
Okay, with that clarification, Mr. President, I think we have been sufficiently clarified by our sponsors. Ulitin ko po, the best person to have sponsored this bill, Mr. President, ang dami nating natutunan. Na-appreciate po natin ang organization ng ating kapulisan, appreciate natin ang trabaho ng ating kapulisan. Of course, we will not be able to solve 100% of the crimes. Actually, we cannot even prevent 100% of crimes. Ganun po talaga. I just hope that because of the reorganization of the PNP, it will be more efficient, it will be more effective, and more sensitive to the needs and sentiments of our people. Para po, the fight against criminality will improve, Mr. President. And maramdaman na, kasi reorganization lang ito, pero sana kahit pagka-reorganize natin, ramdam natin yung pagbabago, Mr. President, sa delivery of services ng ating kapulisan, Mr. President. That is my wish, Mr. President. And I'd like to thank our sponsor and for his patience, and of course our colleagues, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your inputs are very valuable in the crafting of this particular mission, Mr. President. Kahit na sabihin mo ilang oras tayo nakatayo dito, nagpapasalamat talaga kami at napaganda mo itong ating proposed mission, Mr. President. Thank you. Ready na kami po amendment. Yeah.
Yes, we just, majority. Objection, motion approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of this bill is that we have sponsored the measure. With the consent of the body, I move to open the period of interpellation. And I move that I be recognized and to interpellate our distinguished minority leader. I so move, Mr.
Our
President.
distinguished Deputy Majority Floor Leader, author and sponsor of the measure, Senator J.V. Harrison is recognized. And to interpellate a distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel III.
Thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations to our sponsor for sponsoring this measure, and to the authors for coming up with this idea, Mr. President.